So today we are going to focus on what I consider the 8 habits of highly effective directors, tour guides, enrollment specialists, anybody dealing with the prospect to parent piece of your enrollment. So we have often gotten together and we've talked about the steps of a sales cycle. This is not that. This is going to be more the behaviors that go with it, because you can have a really great sales process and you can say, Emily, I'm following all of your steps every single time. That's great, but there are certain behaviors that go into a sales process that I think it's easy to forget about, especially when the day-to-day of being on the front line comes into it. So we're going to focus on behaviors today. Okay, so if I haven't already met you, that is very rare because I've definitely seen a lot of you out there on the road. But this is who I am. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, if you know this, I apologize you're hearing it again. But I don't come from a sales background by any stretch of the imagination. I started my career as a kindergarten teacher. My degree is in early childhood education. I had that big, cute kid right there, and it was time to look for childcare, and I realized that it was way out of budget on a kindergarten teacher's salary. So I had to kind of rethink things. I started applying at a couple of the brands that are out here in Dallas, and I landed at Primrose and then worked at Kids Are Kids, and I really liked being a director. I was a director for 8 years. I was lucky enough to use childcare CRM in my life as a director, and that's how I landed over here. My passions kind of switched from the kids and the parents to now the directors. I just wanted to make sure that we all had tools in our hands. When I came to work for childcare CRM, they said, your background in early childhood education is great. We're happy that you know what you're talking about, but you need some formal sales training. And I just went, ick, who wants to go to sales school? I do not want to be a car salesman. But I learned some really valuable takeaways that I wish every day I could go back and just do one more tour. I want to go back and do one more tour and put these things into place. So I feel really lucky, and I've tried to do these webinars where I take our lives as directors and then what I've learned in formal sales training and kind of blend the two together. So hopefully you can take some things away. All right, so let's start at the beginning and let's define what I mean when I say habit, okay? So when I talk about forming habits, I just mean the things that you do every single day that you don't even realize you're doing. For instance, I would bet that when you get into your centers, you say hi to your teachers. That's a habit, right? You check the schedule, see who's called out sick that day. I would bet that you turn on your management system, and if you're a CRM user on this call, I would really hope that you turn on your CRM system right away. Those are habits. You don't even realize you're doing them, and it kind of bad habits are the same way until somebody points out that you say and like, you don't realize you're doing a bad habit. So as far as it goes, as far as taking a habit and making it something that becomes habitual, I always had heard that it took 21 days to form a habit. That's just what I had always been taught. But the truth is that it doesn't take anywhere near 21 days. And the idea that a habit takes 21 days to form actually comes from this guy named Maxwell Maltz, and he was a cosmetic surgeon back in the 60s. So I'm not sure why he became the expert on habits, but he kind of formed this opinion that it takes 21 days to start a habit. And in recent years, there have been some studies over, at the University of College in London that have said that it takes longer than that. In fact, if you take one of the things that we are going to talk about today, I jumped ahead, sorry. If you take one of these items away and decide it's going to be a habit, it's going to be 66 days before it really becomes something that you do without thinking about it. So habits are traditionally, at this point, going to take 66 days. So keep that in mind. You can't put something into place today and assume that the whole sales process is going to change tomorrow or even 21 days. It's going to take you some time. So I hope that when we talk on March 25th, you can tell me I've got one habit that I've been doing every single day. All right, so the first habit seems pretty obvious, but believe in what you are providing, right? So when I ask you that question, do you believe in your organization? Do you believe in your brand? If you cannot say yes to this, then we have other problems. We need to go back and figure out how to get you to believe in it again. But the fact is that it's easier to sell something and be passionate about it if you really believe in it. And as I've been on this side of the tracks, I obviously encounter a lot of salespeople at these trade shows and conferences. The most effective of us, we use our own product. So like I said, I was a child care CRM user at my school, but I still use it. The email that you got kind of broadcasting this webinar, that came from Child Care CRM. I still believe it's the best platform out there for what I need to do in my own sales efforts. So, you might not have kids enrolled in your school. I get that. But if you can say, I believe in my organization, I believe in my brand, and I would refer it to a friend without any hesitation, then that's good. That means you believe in it. So let's break it down, right? So do you believe in, the outside of your building? Do you believe that you have the best curb appeal in the neighborhood? If you don't, that's a good goal to start with, right? We want to get our curb appeal up. Do you believe that the insides of your classrooms are the best in the neighborhood? Are they the best furnished? Is it the best layout? Do you have everything you need for the kids to succeed? Is it the best inside of your classroom and inside of your lobby? The teachers that are in your programs, do you believe that the teacher in the pre-K class really is the best fit for that class? Do you believe that she's got the happiest, healthiest, safest, most well-nurtured pre-K kids in the community? Because the truth is that a lot of people don't, when you're thinking about dealing with a salesperson, you're not buying from them because you really believe the product is 100% legit and genuine. You don't know enough about it. But what you're buying is the fact that the salesperson on the other side believes that they have the best product. And you think, well, you're the expert. You work with it every day. You must, if you've got that air about you, that confidence that there really is nothing better, that's what we're buying as consumers, is that the salesperson or the representative of the organization, they believe that it's the best you can get. Second habit is get in the habit of setting goals and having plans. That seems very obvious, right? But where do you even start? If you don't have a goal, I think the best place to start is at the very end. I want you guys to think about what you need the end of this week to look like. What do you need the end of the month to look like, the quarter, the year? Start at the very end, keep the end in mind, and go backwards. So when you're setting these goals, we're going to get to kind of how to set them, but there's a copy of this Harvard study I came across. It's in your handout section, and it actually says, and of course it's about college students and things like that, but it says that people who have set goals and go back and check on them, so check on them daily, check on them weekly, they set a goal and they come back and revisit it, that they're going to perform 30% better than other people who didn't set a goal, even if they miss the mark. So even if you set a goal and you don't achieve it, you're going to do better than the directors down the block that didn't even bother to say, I want to do 10 enrollments by the end of this month. So just setting that goal out there is going to help you improve your processes and be better than your competitors. So how do we set a goal, right? It's easy to just put something out there and say 10 tours by the end of this month, okay? But when you are setting these, I want you to think, if you've ever heard of this, it's called SMART, right? When you're setting them, first of all, they need to be specific. Don't just tell me you want to improve your curb appeal. A specific goal would be, I want to paint the doors, power wash the siding, and install shutters. That's a specific goal. Second of all, can you measure this goal? So if you leave this and you say, we want our teachers to be more involved in all of the tours, okay, that's great. But at the end of the month, how can you tell me if the teachers were more involved in the tours? Well, you can say, we want, on a tour, we want the teacher to shake the parent's hand 9 out of 10 times. That's measurable. I can see if we actually hit that goal. Is it attainable? Don't leave this webinar, all of us shouldn't leave the webinar going, we're going to open 6 schools by the end of the year. Well, that's not achievable for every single one of us on this webinar. So pick something that you could actually get to or get close to. Don't pick something super high in the sky. And then, is it relevant? Does it meet the end goal that we set? If the end goal is to have better curb appeal, then yes, power washing the school is relevant to that. Having teachers shake hands is not relevant to that. And is it time-based? That was my biggest fault as a director when I was setting goals, is I would say we want all of these things to happen, but I didn't, besides saying, by the end of next year when we sit down and do this meeting again, I didn't really have time-based goals. So, I want 10 more enrollments and I want them by March 31st. You need to set a time on these things, how long you think it's going to take. And the truth is, guys, you can be the most charismatic, influential director, assistant director, tour guide in the world. But if you don't have an organizational system, those efforts that you're putting into place, they're going to suffer. So on my side of it, with the sales reps that I encounter, the ones that I see performing the best out there, they are OCD organized. We plan what we do every single day. When I get to the office, I know what's coming and I know what's on my agenda. And I also know, besides what's on the agenda, what behavior I'm trying to improve on. So in this, if I said the behavior I'm trying to improve on is believing in CRM, then even in my agenda, I have kind of worked in places that I'm going to say, you know what, during this demo, I'm going to work on my passion. I'm going to get my passion up a little bit higher because I need to work on that behavior. So if you've got that clear strategy, you're going to execute these goals quickly, purposefully. You're going to fly through them faster than you thought you could. All right, so let's talk about the next habit. Get in the habit of preparing ahead of time and debriefing after. This comes from a concept that you learn when you go to formal sales training called pre-call planning and debriefing. And it seemed like it wouldn't fit into my trainings with directors, and how in the world would they pre-call plan? It just doesn't work in their worlds. But actually, if I could go back, I would start this process. And I have put a couple of handouts in there for you. One of them is the post-tour debrief. I want you guys to take it, print it. You can edit it if you want a Word copy. Just email me. So the pre-call plan, basically what you're going to do, and I think if you could do it daily, that's ideal. You know, it's meant to be done before every single tour, but that's not always feasible in your worlds. But I think maybe, you know, at the beginning of the week, do your pre-tour meeting on Mondays with your team. And what I want you to do is get all of your scheduled tours and then even leave some room to talk about the walk-in tours that you're going to get. But I want you to kind of have a meeting where you talk about your objectives for the meetings and the tours, right? So you can talk lofty goals. Like on all of our tours this week, we want to be sure to talk about the 5th week free. Okay, that's an objective. But if you have specifics, you know, I know there's a family coming in that needs to enroll by the end of next week. So my objective on that tour is different maybe than my objective with somebody who's moving to our town or our city in March. Our objectives might be different. So let's talk about specific objectives on each tour. And then who's participating in this? And what are the roles that you expect from them? And when I say that, I mean, who's opening the door? And what do you expect her role to be? What is the teacher going to be doing during this tour? The parents that come in, those are participants too. What do you expect from them? What do you need from them? So let's talk about everybody's role and how we facilitate that. Do I need any more information from these people? So get all of the tour sheets that you've gathered, log into your CRM, get the notes out, and figure out what you know and what you still need to find out on these tours, okay? How about roadblocks? Is there anybody coming in on these tours that we know there's going to be a potential roadblock with, that we've got to get over and we have to have a hard conversation? And then let's talk about how we're going to get to a decision-making process. That's something we're consistently working on with you guys. But when I say how you're going to get to a yes, I mean registration, right? How are you going to get to a yes? A no, which is not our favorite decision, but guys, it is a decision, and I would rather you have a parent tell you, no, it's never going to happen, than for you to chase them for weeks. So how are you going to get to a yes, a no, or at least a very clear next step of when we're going to be talking? That's what I want you to do on Mondays, at the very least, set a pre-tour meeting. The post-tour or the debrief session, I wish I could go back. This was my owner. I swear to you. I love her dearly, but I swear she would come into my school and just be like, all right, 10 enrollments this week. Like, no help with how we're going to get there, what we're going to do, what's working, what's not. Just this is what we're going to do. So in the sales world, if any of you, some of you that are sitting up at my executive owner level, you've come from this world. You know that you have sales representatives and then you have sales managers, right? And it's the sales manager's job to debrief with his or her reps and say, how did your calls go? How did your demonstrations go? And that's a debrief session. So what you guys need to do is identify in the school, who is your sales manager? Is it the director? Is it the owner? Is it the regional level? Somebody needs to take that role and say, I'm the sales manager and I'm going to be responsible for pre-tour planning and debriefing with my team. So when you're doing a debrief on these tours, and again, I don't want you to be generic. I don't want you to sit down on Friday and say, we did 7 tours and overall things went like this. That's not going to be helpful. I want you to take 7 tours and say, on tour number 1, what could I have done better? What behavior did I forget? What step in the process? Did I forget to ask for the enrollment? Did I not do my upfront contract? What happened? Talk about specifically how that tour ended and how you wanted it to end. So what did you want from that tour? What was your objective, and did it go that way? Did you get the yes, the no, or the next clear step? What did you think you did great? What really went well, so you can repeat the process and then help other people in the center do the same thing? And then how could you have gotten to the better outcome? You know, did you get to the end and they said, I got to go home and talk it over with dad? And then you said, okay, call me if you have any questions. That's something we could have done differently. We could have gotten to a better outcome, right? So really, I think this might be one of the best things to put in place is a pre-tour meeting on Mondays and a debriefing on Fridays. And again, please do it specifically. It will so improve your tours if you talk about each tour individually. All right. You guys are probably so sick of me talking about the upfront contract, but I'm telling you, every time I do my upfront contract on my own sales calls, I close 100%. And if I could go back to all of my tours, it would be a no-brainer. This would be the one thing I would bring back. So the upfront contract, in the world of buying and selling, okay, our roles as consumers and salespeople, somebody along the way has taught us that as a consumer, we don't tell the salesperson our bottom line. And as the person selling, we don't give the consumer everything they need because we both feel like the other side's going to abuse that. And what that's called is mutual mystification. So none of us are going to get to the root and the core of a good conversation because we're not going to tell each other what's really on our minds. And what the upfront contract does is it gets rid of that. It says we cannot do this together if I'm not in it and you're not in it. The best acronym I can give you is ANOT. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of an upfront contract, but you basically need to have these 4 components, right? Appreciate, naturally, obviously, and typically. And that sounds like Japanese when I read it, but when we get to the next screen, you'll understand. But ANOT, appreciate, naturally, obviously, and typically. Okay, I want those to kind of be in your upfront contract. And the upfront contract sounds something like this. So you do it before, man, if you can get it on the phone call, even better, but definitely before you walk around your building for a tour. I think this is a great thing to do in the front office. You know, when somebody walks in for a tour, bring them in, sit them down, and do your upfront contract. And basically what you're going to say is, you know, thank you so much for taking the time to be at Lucky Learners today. I really appreciate you being here. That is duh. Why wouldn't we tell somebody that? But we don't. I appreciate you being here. And then you got to get the agenda out of the way. So the time is really crucial here. When we booked your tour on the phone, we talked about it taking about 30 minutes. Is that still good for you? If it's a walk-in tour, you say typically our tours take about 30 to 40 minutes. Is that something you have time for? The time is so crucial, you guys, because you need to know what you're working with. If a parent tells you they have 15 minutes, then you need to decide, can you get through the entire sales process in 15 minutes and get to a clear next step or a decision? If it's no, it's no. But then if you know you have 15 minutes, then you can say, you know, heck, you're not interested in the playground, you're interested in the curriculum and the teachers. That's all we're talking about for 15 minutes. So definitely do the agenda at the time. And now here comes the contract piece. You know, naturally, you're going to have plenty of questions about our teachers and our programs, and obviously, I'll want to be sure we're the best fit for you, so I'm going to have some questions for you. Typically, at the end, we're going to wrap up and talk about what makes sense for Sophie and what the next steps might be, okay? Appreciate, naturally, obviously, typically. I'm going to have questions for you, you're going to have questions for me, and then typically at the end, what makes sense is that we come up here and talk about the next steps for you. Does that sound okay with you? Okay, so you're diffusing the resistance at the end when it's time to ask for the enrollment. I promise. If you tell them at the beginning, we're going to come back and talk about the next steps, it's not a surprise to anybody when you pull out the registration information. And again, when you say, does that sound okay with you, they're agreeing to you now that they're a participant here. They've got to participate and follow the rules as much as you do, or I'm not walking around the school. So when you do this contract, you're going to get yeses. Everybody's going to say, yeah, that sounds great. If you get a no, please tell me because I want to meet that parent so badly. Okay, so that's your upfront contract. It will change your life if you guys can put it in place. All right, next habit. Get in the habit of actually listening. It sounds, obvious again, but a lot of people hire directors, and I know for a fact, I love my company and I think they love me, but I would bet they brought me on because I'm a good talker. I can talk to anybody, anytime. I have never met a stranger, but that doesn't make us good salespeople. Good salespeople actually, I'm sorry to be frank, but they just shut up and listen. It has nothing to do with what we're saying. So when I say get in the habit of actually listening, what do I mean? I mean, you've got to ask the right questions here. So when you're talking to these parents, you know, who's going to need the care, what's bringing you to Lucky Learners, why are you here in the first place, where have you been before, when do you need care, how soon do you need to start, and all of these questions, we should make them open-ended, right? They should go further. So if, you know, we say, what brought you to Lucky Learners today? They say, you know, well, we're just really not happy with where we're coming from. There's been a lot of teacher turnover. Oh my gosh, well, was it always like that? No, actually it wasn't. I mean, you just need them to be talking and convincing themselves why they're there. There's a rule that we've talked about with some of you. It's called 10-30-90. A parent that leaves your school is going to retain leaves your school after a tour, excuse me, but they're going to retain 10% of what they heard. So if you talk the whole time, if you sit in that front office and just talk at them, they're taking 10% away. If you can show them and tell them, they're going to take 30% away. But if they can say it out loud, if you can get them to say it, they're going to take 90% away from that tour. So you don't want to be talking, directors. You don't want to be the one talking. You want to ask questions, get them to keep talking about why they're unhappy where they're at, why they've landed in your school today, why this is a good fit for them. Obviously, interrupting is bad. And I know you say I would never interrupt, but what I kind of mean by that is when a parent says, well, we've been really unhappy with teacher turnover. Instead of asking them a follow-up question to get them to talk more about how unhappy they've been about teacher turnover, we band-aid it. We immediately, as directors, are fixers. We're nurturers. We're caretakers. They say, I've had a problem with teacher turnover, and we immediately jump to, our teachers have been here 20 plus years. Answer, 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 answer. That's kind of an interrupt. I don't want you to band-aid it. I want you to open that wound a little bit more, so to speak, and get them to talk about how unhappy they are right now. So open-ended questions, a really great one is just the word "oh." Like if they say something to you and you need more information or you want more information, just go, "oh," and it's got a question at the end, so they've got to give you a little bit more information, and they're just going to keep flowing, right? So, and then clarify his or her answers before you reply. So, you know, when they talk to you about being unhappy with teacher turnover, you know, just clarify what you're hearing. It makes it, the prospect feels like you're listening to them, you got them, and then you can reply. So get in the habit of actually listening. And then when it is time to talk, get in the habit of being an amazing storyteller. This is one of the coolest tricks to a true sales process is telling stories. So for you guys, you got to figure out what your stories are. And it's how you tell the story. So it's not, you know, that 7% versus 93% down there that you see, that just means that it's 7% what you're saying in the story and 93% how you're telling it. There are stories I tell in my sessions when I go on the road that they still give me goosebumps because they get to me. And as humans, we're built to really resonate, like we stick with stories. So if you can tell your pitch, your tour in a story form, and it's 93% about how you are telling it, how you feel. If they can tell that this really means something to you, that gets across. The stories as far as a tour or a sales pitch, you need 3 components here. You need a likable hero, and newsflash, it's not you. It's never the director. The director is not the likable hero. It's the parent or another parent that's been in their shoes or another child that's had the same issue. So you need a likable hero that encounters some roadblocks in the way. So, you know, a parent just like them who has really found that our tuition is on the higher side of their budget, but they gave it a try and they've decided that this is really the best value. They've been here 3 years. They've had 2 more children along the way. So I have a likable hero who has a big roadblock and comes out the other end totally transformed and much happier. That's how you get to those stories. And you need 3 stories like in your wheelhouse prepared at any given time. And I don't want them to be the same kind of stories. You know, you need a story about, and I am not suggesting you make these up. There are stories in your center right now that you just need to harness. So get a story about, you know, somebody who came, you know, a toddler who moved to your school because they were sick of being bitten in the other toddler classroom and now they've come out transformed. Somebody who thought, but, you know, this was not in my budget and now they've come out transformed. Somebody who dealt with a lot of teacher turnover and has now come out transformed. You need stories, and all of you that are giving tours or talking to people, third-party stories really make things, especially objections. If somebody says, wow, that's more expensive than we were thinking, You can say, that is not uncommon. I have heard that before. Let me tell you a story about a likable hero who encountered a roadblock who has emerged transformed. That's how you do it. It's not you defending things. It's somebody else's experience, and it's a third-party story, so become a great storyteller. Next habit. Get in the habit of following up and keeping your promises, okay? Most directors, they never follow up after a phone call or a tour. That sounds crazy to me because I do what I do, but even some of my favorite CRM directors, you guys don't follow up after phone calls. You take a phone call, somebody writes it down, maybe it gets into the system, but if they come in, they come in. If they don't, they don't. People are calling you because they want attention. They want you to follow up. They'll tell you if they don't. But you know, most directors are not following up after phone calls. They're not following up after tours, and it kind of makes prospective parents, prospective buyers feel like you forgot us. You don't care. You never called me back. Even if I didn't ask for a call back, it makes me feel really important if you do. So do you have a clear, defined process that you're following? Like if you say at, Lucky Learners, the organization, we're going to call people back one day after their tour. That's great. That's a process. Who is going back into the CRM system and making sure that the task was completed the next day with good notes and good descriptions? Because it's fine to just build business rules and processes out, but who's inspecting that it's actually getting completed on time? Or is there somebody going, yeah, actually, we're not completing that for about 48 hours after the tour. Okay, well, then we need to go back and redo our processes. Most people don't even know if prospective parents are opening emails. So do you? And if you're a CRM user on this call, your answer is yes, because you're sending your emails out through your CRM system. And I want you to try to send all of them out. I want you to try to stop using Outlook and Gmail as much as you can and use your CRM system, because you can track if people are opening them, what time they're opening them. And you guys, there's a lot of statistics that go into this. So, statistics say that if somebody doesn't open your email in 60 minutes, it's not getting opened. So you'll know very quickly, when I'm sending this email, is this parent engaged? And also remember, you have the timestamp. So if you're noticing that people are opening emails at 4:30 every day, stop calling them at 11 a.m. Get in the habit of calling them at 4:30, because that's when they're near their phone and they're available. As far as keeping promises go, most people that are walking into your school, if they've been somewhere else, they're there because some director overpromised and underdelivered, and you do not want to fall into that trap, okay? And I did it all the time. I would get a parent that would come in and talk about how, the teacher turnover was too much for them. And I immediately jumped on the 6 teachers in my school that had been there more than 3 years. But the truth is, I never should have promised that we didn't have turnover, because that's just not the truth, right? My afternoon staff turned over very frequently. They switched schedules. I should not have promised anything like that. I should have been realistic with them and said, we have a lot of tenure in this school, and we hope to keep it, and here's how we keep our teachers. But the truth is, you may see some fluctuation in your staff. So don't get in the habit of over-promising things and then not delivering, because people are going to lose faith in you and trust. And perception is reality for a parent. If they perceive that you didn't tell them the truth in the beginning, they're going to perceive that you are going to lie to them over and over and over again. But if you can just be realistic and say, here's what we do to keep your child safe, to keep your child healthy, but God forbid, do not promise those new parents that their kid's not going to get sick in the first month, because we all know that their kid's going to get sick in that first 2 or 3 weeks. So just tell them what to expect, and they'll trust you a lot more. Your check-ins on day, for new students, are you doing a check on day 1, 7, 30, 60, 90? Most parents that withdraw are withdrawing within the first 90 days because we overpromised and underdelivered. And I know I was just in a training with some of my favorite new clients, and they were saying, I tell my parents, I have an open door, you can trust me, you can tell me anything. But they don't. They'll just withdraw. And I get it. You're telling them to trust you and to come in, and you mean it. But guys, there's a lot of people like me out there, and I'll tell you what, I am never going to get in a conflict with my son's director of his school. I'm never going to tell her anything is wrong. I just don't do it. I don't want to be confrontational, and I'll withdraw. She'll never see it coming, and I'll have been festering for months, but I don't want to have those conversations. And I don't know what that is about me, but there's a lot of parents just like that. So my best suggestion there is some of these check-ins should escalate. Check-in on day 30, that might should come from an owner or a regional director, somebody a little higher up. Because if the regional manager of my son's after school care sent me an email, I'm more likely to say, hey, Alex, thanks for checking on us. Everything's going great, but there is this one thing that's bugging me because I don't know Alex. I don't see him on a daily basis, and he can convey to the director something that I'm not comfortable with. So I think those check-ins, definitely escalate them, if you will. Give somebody another venue to respond to so you can catch the perception that you want to fix in that first 90 days. All right. Get in the habit of asking for feedback and referrals. So when are you asking for feedback? Most of you guys that I've worked with have an annual parent survey, and I think that's great. But I think we should also be asking for feedback during the sales process. I can guarantee you when I close this webinar, there's going to be a little survey that pops up from GoToWebinar that asks me how my experience was today. I ignore it most of the time, but I know I can answer it if I ever need to. It's there. I expect to see it. If you get your parents in that habit, especially at the very beginning, when they're still in the pipeline as a prospect, they're going to be expecting you to ask for feedback anytime they transition a classroom or anytime, they do some sort of different program. They're just going to get used to you asking for feedback. So why not automate some of that stuff? Why not have some surveys that go out after a phone call? How was your call with us? Did you have any other questions? How was your tour with us? What was your experience? I really recommend doing these through some sort of survey software because it appears anonymous to a parent, so they're more likely to fill it out for you. But remember, as a CRM user, you can see if people are clicking emails. So while it may appear anonymous on their side of it, you can look in and say, oh, it looks like Michelle clicked that email. I bet she filled out the survey. Let me go check it. And then you can get really, honest feedback from Michelle about how her tour was or how her phone call was or what she thought of the registration process. So don't wait until after these parents are enrolled to do your 1-day, 7-day, 30-day check-in. Send surveys out while they're in the pipeline so you can kind of get some feedback on how phone calls are going, how tours are going, is there anything that they would like to see different, and kind of shrink that sales conversion timing a lot. All right, so let's talk about referrals. So a lot of you have a referral program in place. You don't broadcast it a ton. Maybe once a year you're going to talk about your referral program. Some of you have it like up on the front counter. It says, we love referrals, get $100 off or whatever. But let's kind of talk about the statistics of referring. So people are 4 times more likely to buy when it's been referred to them from somebody they know. Okay? So, who do moms hang out with? Who do dads hang out with? They hang out with other dads. They hang out with other moms. People are more likely if their friend comes up and says, hey, I really am enjoying my time at Lucky Learners. You'll never believe what they just did with Sophie. The other thing is, even if it's not a close friend, I'm part of that, Facebook and Nextdoor and all that stuff. And in my community, if I ever see a post that says, just tried a great Mexican restaurant and there's a 20% off discount, I'm more likely that night when it's time to talk about dinner to think about that because somebody like me in my community has just referred a Mexican restaurant and it wasn't on Yelp or anything like that. So, you definitely want your client base referring. Somebody who is coming to you as a referral is going to stay with you much longer than somebody who's just coming to you from off, a drive-by traffic. They just stay longer. They trust you more right off the bat. And then, believe it or not, more than 80% of your happy customers will give you a referral anytime you ask. They'll just give it to you. But the rules behind referrals and introductions, that is that 20-60-20 you see at the bottom. So 20% of your parent base is going to refer you whether you ask or not. They are like me. They just talk, and they're going to talk about you whether you like it or not. The other 20% at the end, they're never going to refer. They might like you. They might think you're great, but for whatever reason, referring makes them uncomfortable. And if that's the case, let them off the hook. No problem. It's our job to make you feel okay. But what you really are looking for is that middle 60%. I call it the movable middle. It's people that like you, that would be happy to refer you or introduce you to other people, but they don't think about it or you consistently. Unless you have a proactive conversation with them, they're not thinking about referring. So, yes, you can send out an email or put a poster up. I don't know if any of you guys use Uber. I think most of us do. But if you notice next time you do your Uber, at the bottom of every email, there's like a link to refer a friend to Uber, and you can easily forward it out. I say you put your referral stuff in your signature lines or at the bottom or a link somewhere, just so a parent's used to seeing it all the time. Oh, refer a friend, refer a friend, refer a friend. But also interrupt the pattern every now and then. If you have, a new company moving into your town and you get a parent that just took a job there, you might pull them aside and say, hey, Michelle, do you have a couple minutes to talk? I want to make sure that you have had a really good experience with us at Lucky Learners. Is there anything else we can do? And after she tells you, yeah, absolutely, we love it here, we would never imagine anything else, you just say, well, I know you just took a job at State Farm and there's a ton of people moving to this area. If you wouldn't mind, we'd love to have more people like you in the school. We think it makes for a much better community. Would you mind, sending somebody over here if they have questions or if they need anything? Don't hesitate. We do open houses, yada, yada, yada. And an even broader spectrum, when I'm asking for referrals, I go as far as to do the work for them. So I'll say, hey, Mike, you're going to that conference next month. There's going to be a ton of people there. Would you mind if I gave you some information about us to pass along? Or even if I, wrote a little blurb kind of introducing myself and you can forward it out if you need to. I find that if I do the work for my current clients and say, hey, Mike, I'm going to write a little blurb kind of introducing myself and what Child Care CRM does. And if you ever think about it, will you go ahead and forward that out? If I do the work for Mike, he's sending it all the time rather than just saying, hey, don't forget to tell people about me. So break the pattern a little bit. Don't just hang a plaque in the lobby that says we love referrals, okay? Oh my gosh, I can't believe we got through the 8 habits. That was amazing. So let's kind of review them. That was fast. Okay, so habit number 1, I'm waiting for your screens to change. There we go. Habit number 1, get in the habit of believing in what you provide, and do not move forward if you don't believe that you have the best organization in the community. Don't move on. Go fix whatever it is that's holding you back from believing that. Number 2, get in the habit of setting goals. Make sure that they are SMART. Remember that acronym, that we can measure them, that we can achieve them, that we have a time set on that. Get in the habit of doing that pre-tour plan meeting and your debrief on Fridays. I think that's huge. And maybe do a big debrief at the end of the month. Get in the habit of using that upfront contract and practice it. During those pre-tour meetings on Mondays, I want you guys to role play it because that upfront contract is not comfortable. It's not something that just flows off the tongue usually. You have to go back and have somebody you trust to do it back and forth with. Get in the habit of actually listening. Remember 10, 30, 90. If they will say it, they're going to retain 90% of it. So you want that parent talking more than you. Get in the habit of being a great storyteller. Get 3 stories together. You need your heroic individual, your likable figure, you need the roadblock that they couldn't get over, and then them coming out totally transformed and happier. And make sure that story gives you goosebumps because that's what makes you a good storyteller. Get in the habit of following up and keeping your promises. Okay, so touch back with those tours, whether you think they want it or not. They will unsubscribe or they'll tell you to get off their case. But other than that, you're making them feel ignored and they were looking for attention. So follow up and keep your promises. If you tell a parent that something's going to happen, you better make sure, even if you have to do it yourself, that it's going to happen. And then get in the habit of asking for feedback and referrals. So ask for feedback during your sales process, during the tour process, and then put a better referral plan into place this year, you guys. So those are the habits that I want you to start. Pick one. Remember, it's going to be March 25th before this is really a habit if you start it today. 66 days. You have to commit to that. So if you have any questions or comments, or you want to tell me how your new 8 habits are going, my information is on the screen. I love to hear that. Give me a call, send me an email if you've got any questions. Again, I am recording this, so we're going to send it through editing, make it all pretty, and then I will redistribute it so you can share it with your friends and your other directors. We're going to do one of these every month. It's going to be a different sales topic, and then those of you who are CRM users, there's a customer support webinar the following week, so they're going to talk to you about good habits within your CRM system, so be on the lookout for that. As always, it's been a pleasure. We love you guys so much, and do stay in touch. Happy New Year, everybody.